Welcome to another episode of You Make It Happen. I am so excited for today's episode. We have a guest on. This is Laurel, and I know you guys have heard me preach so many times about how we can heal our trauma through many different methods, not just therapy, but through so many different healing mediums. Well, today Laurel is talking about how to heal trauma through kink, sexual exploration, non-monogamy, and so much more. I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for being here on the You Make It Happen podcast. I really appreciate you coming today. I'm just so excited to get to interview you for this. And
it's my pleasure.
I almost said our readers, our listeners and our viewers, if they tune in on YouTube, can see what today's episode is about, which I think is going to provide a lot of intrigue for everybody listening. But before we get into that, and yes, we will get into that, but before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your upbringing?
Sure. So I grew up in Florida and was part of a kind of a traditional Lutheran community and wasn't super into it. But then when I went to college, I found myself part of the Church of Christ, and I was fully devoted up until about 2020, and everything just kind of came to a boil. And my husband at the time and I decided to switch gears, and that really was the start of the whole journey and healing and so many things.
When you say switch gears, what do you mean?
We had been monogamous and really active members of our church, and both of us came at it from different angles, but we both got to a point where we couldn't really support the church anymore.
Gotcha.
And
what led you to that decision?
It was a combination of things.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing for me was seeing my churches and the greater American Christian community, seeing their response to Donald Trump, seeing their response to the pandemic, and the way that they, as a whole, obviously not all churchgoers,
right? Not blanket, but
right.
Overall.
But I saw so much of it that I felt the urge to say I'm a Christian, but not that kind of Christian. And
like explain yourself away.
Yeah. And so that wasn't a great feeling. I decided that this probably wasn't the right thing for me.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to be part of something where I feel like I have to qualify it.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
What made you get away from the monogamous part of it? I can see the whole distancing from the church, because you're like, hey, I don't want to be this, and this is not the kind of person I want to be if you are, only helping certain groups of people and only kind to certain groups of people or whatever. But what made you get away from the whole concept of monogamy?
My husband at the time and I, we had... my husband at the time and I, we just had a lot of conversations, and we had been a little bit mismatched. And coming from our churchy backgrounds, we were not really coached through that sort of thing.
Okay.
And so we decided that we would try non-monogamy, specifically polyamory.
Okay, yeah.
And through that, an entire world was opened for me, presumably for him as well.
Yeah.
It's challenged so much that I had believed before.
Yeah.
And,
well, because we're brought up to believe that monogamy is the only way.
Right.
Like,
it's
and it's
so
ingrained.
deeply programmed.
Yes, it's so deeply programmed.
Even now, I've been doing this for 4 years, and I will still find myself with little flashes of monogamy training, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's the programming, right?
Right. It'll just pop up and I'm like, wait a second, no.
That's not right. You're like, that shouldn't be, or why am I thinking that way? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the biggest takeaways that I've had from all of the many years of therapy is just challenging your thoughts.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I'm so glad you said that, because it's one of the things that I had trouble even understanding at first. What do you mean my thoughts aren't true? All of my thoughts are true. They're my thoughts. That makes them true.
Right.
And then I'm like, wait a minute. The more I learned, and the more my therapist, helped me and guided me and enlightened me, and the more work I did on my own, I was like, oh, wait a minute. My thoughts are often lying to me.
Right.
My thoughts are often like programming, whether it's monogamy or be a good girl, trauma programming.
Yep. Body image
Programming, perfectionism programming, programming, especially as women, the people pleasing programming. Like, be oh god, it's like the diatribe in the Barbie movie, be liked, but don't be too liked that you threaten other women, and oh my god, it's like that's why that became such a success, I assume. I mean,
oh yeah, it was, from what I understand, the Barbie movie did quite a bit.
Yeah, that's what I remember one of my friends who is so enlightened and has done so much therapy and has gone from anxious to insecure and was like, you need to go see the Barbie movie, Missy. And I was just like, the fuck? Why would I go see the Barbie? Are you out of your fucking mind? That misogynistic bullshit? No. Like, why would I go see that? And then she's like, you need to go see it. It's not what you think it is. It's just totally not what you think it is. And I went and saw it and I was like, it's not what I thought it was. It was really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. That's great. And so would you say that like the religion played a part? Was it like, would you describe it as oppressive, your upbringing, or like how would you?
I don't think that was their intention.
Okay.
But for me, so I have two boys. They are 6 and 8, and they are amazing.
Yeah.
Of course. Everyone says that. But like, it's been so interesting watching them because they are both on the spectrum, but they present very differently.
Okay.
And one of them, I am starting to see what appears to be like hypersexuality.
Okay.
And it has brought a lot to the surface and a lot of conversations with my excellent therapist.
Good.
Just about, what that might have been like for me as a kid if I had exhibited those same things in my community with my family. They wanted me to be able to move through society, obviously. And so a lot of things were kind of smushed out of me.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out how much I want to push back against that, because again, I still need to be able to hold a job. I need to be able to like be a mother to my kids without bringing shame and embarrassment on them.
Right.
But trying to make more room for what might be my own instincts and what feels right to me.
Yeah. Well, and provide them a more open-minded perspective than you got.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. That is wonderful. So I love that. How did you get started on your healing path? Because you mentioned you've done a lot of trauma therapy, and I love that because, show's all about trauma and travel.
Yes. So, like many do, I had a complicated upbringing, and there have been, significant losses over the years.
Yeah.
And so I've been looking for a good therapist for a long time.
Yeah.
I finally found one, and
when you say looking for a good therapist, did you go through a few, or did you
I did.
Just look until you found the magic one that you thought looked like the right one to begin with?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error.
Thank you.
And it was difficult and kind of infuriating.
Yes. Yes, it is.
The invalidation that I experienced from
shitty therapists.
Yeah, it's just baffling and infuriating. But I did find actually a string of good therapists.
You did?
Yes.
Okay.
I
feel like that's relatively rare.
It is. Actually, it came about through the birth of my son. There is a really great support system through Evergreen Health.
Oh, okay.
In Kirkland. And they were excellent about following up and focusing on my mental health.
Oh, really? That kind of surprises me.
Mm-hmm. Because there's so much postpartum depression. They're becoming much more aware and proactive about preparing mothers for it.
Good.
And so they connected me with the first of a few great therapists.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you actually got a good one to begin on that particular journey.
Yes.
I love that.
I think the most impactful conversation I've ever had with a therapist was around the idea of shame. I had picked up a lot of shame through my childhood just around sexuality, and the way that she reframed it for me was life-changing, invaluable. Anyone that I speak to that is having any kind of troubles, keep going until you find a therapist that matches. Because there are it's a shit show.
It is. And there's so many bad ones. So
right.
By the time this episode gets released, I will have had an episode release called How to Find a Good Therapist. Mm-hmm. And it goes through a lot of the book that you recommended, which is Complex PTSD by Pete Walker, mm-hmm. and how he goes over criteria for how to find a good therapist.
Right.
So I sort of incorporate that, and I give credit to him and reference the book and recommend the book, mm-hmm. in addition to saying, and these are also the criteria that I have for finding a good therapist. And then like I get that this is how we find a good therapist, but then I also got the question, how do I find a fucking therapist at all? And I'm like, okay, I hear you. And so then I gave, some recommendations for how to find a therapist in general, which was like Psychology Today, ask your friends, like, those people doing the work, maybe ask them. And maybe you can't see their therapist, maybe their therapist is full, but their therapist usually has a network. Mm-hmm. They usually have recommendations. And if you ask, you may get some good recommendations. Yeah. So that's, yeah. I'm really excited to hear you say that, because it just reiterates and reaffirms and validates everything that I have said, which is it is a total fucking shit show, and there's so many bad therapists.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate, but there are so many. I mean, therapists aren't even required to be trained in trauma, and I'm like, you think that's some pretty basic shit? I get some basic shit.
Yeah, it's. What can you do but
yep.
laugh?
Yeah, what can you do but laugh? Yes. Anyway, I know, squirrel, I'm always off on the ADD path. So, what has been most helpful in creating your shame resilience on your personal journey?
Limited exposure therapy, I guess.
Yeah?
So one of the things that I kind of consciously went into this, I had a lot of images or issues around body image.
Yeah,
and
as most women do, if not all of us.
Right, and especially coming out of the Christian purity culture, there's just so much there. And I met someone once we opened up the marriage, and we started doing a lot of exploring, and I found that I really enjoyed taking pictures and finding good poses that worked for me.
Yeah.
And that really started to expand and kind of lay the groundwork for me to reach self neutrality even with my body, and just stop criticizing it and just start seeing some
positives.
Yeah, some
stop
value
hating.
to it, some things that I appreciated about it. And I found that was a kind of a running theme through all of my healing, was just finding ways to quiet the inner critic and start circling back, just kind of challenging those thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, this is not necessarily reality. This is what you're making your reality.
Yes. And what you've been programmed to think or believe.
Right.
And that programming leads to the thoughts that are not necessarily true and not based in fact. That's one of the things that my therapist has also taught me, is like, okay, yeah, that's your thought, and check the facts, which is a DBT skill, right? Like, check the facts. What are the facts? Like, what do you know about the situation? Well, did that person say they weren't attracted to you because of your body type? Well, no, they didn't text me back within an hour. When I was super anxiously attached. Or maybe 20 minutes. Let's just be honest about that. It might have been 20 minutes. So I read some bullshit article. I really made this mistake. I read some bullshit article saying, like, oh, everybody should text you back within 20 minutes because everybody's got a smartphone on their hands at all times. And
super toxic.
Exactly. Oh, it was super toxic. It was such bullshit. But I read this fucking article, and it put this thought in my head that everybody should reply within 20 minutes, or I'm not valuable to them. Or I don't matter to them, or I'm not attracted to them if it's a dating thing, or whatever. And I'm like, oh, God.
That was a rough standard to sit with.
It was, and it was just setting myself up for failure. And I didn't know at the time. I was just like, yeah, we're all super connected. We all have our phones in our fucking hands 24/7. You should reply to me immediately. And I'm like, wait a minute. That is like, and now I know. Now I can look back, and I'm like, this is super anxiously attached. That's me being incredibly insecure. Yeah. Like, do I have my phone available 24/7 for every single person that texts me to reply to them within 20 minutes? Absolutely not. Like, Am I going to reply if I get a message that I see within 20 minutes of somebody who is in a horrific car crash? Absolutely.
Right.
Am I going to reply to somebody that's like, hey, what are you doing on Saturday if I'm in the middle of working and I see it? No, I'm busy. I'll get to you when I get to you.
Right.
Like, or I'm at a, concert, or I'm doing something, or I'm taking mental health downtime, or whatever. Like, you don't need to justify the reason you're not texting somebody back instantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's your time. Or like a lot of anxious attachers, and I know I'm getting down a rabbit hole here, and I'll promise I'll get back to a point at some point. But like a lot of anxious attachers would be like, well, he didn't reply to my text, but I could see that he was posting on social media. You're not entitled to his time.
Yeah.
And vice versa. She's not entitled to your time. That's their downtime. They're using their phone how they see fit. They don't have to reply to you. It doesn't mean they're not interested in you. It doesn't mean you're not attractive. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily don't want to see you again. It means that for whatever reason, they've decided to spend 5 minutes or 5 hours or whatever on social media, and it has nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. You are making it about you. Your thoughts betray you because of your insecurities.
Right.
Like, it has nothing to do with you. And I'm like, I totally was that girl. I was like, well, I could see that they posted. Like, what the fuck? How dare you be on your phone without replying to me? You've been there. You can understand.
You've been
on the other end of it. Because you were very avoidant, and now you've gone to much more secure.
I'm still finding the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't specifically want to change every aspect of what could be seen as avoidant behaviors. Like, I really value my time to myself. I have a lot of crafts and hobbies and things like that, and I want to make space for those things.
Yeah.
And
I can just be introverted too.
It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things.
Just part of who I am.
Yeah.
So just trying to find an authentic balance between being more accessible, being braver about, sitting with uncomfortable emotions, but also staying true to who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, which is hard, especially in social scenarios. I find myself like doing what's the word I'm looking for? Performative is the word I'm looking for, but it's like performative something.
Chameleon.
Yeah. Changing your colors and changing who you are, or changing who you show up as based on who you're around and the social setting and the scenario, and who am I supposed to be in this moment. Mm-hmm. And I'll still catch myself doing that.
Social scripting.
Yeah, social scripting. Mm-hmm. And then when I catch myself doing it, I'll stop and I'll be like, wait a minute, am I enjoying being here right now? Do I want to be here right now? And am I showing up as me right now? Or am I trying to be somebody that's pleasing this crowd? Am I trying to be somebody that's like, so-and-so's friend, or getting this person's attention, or being the one that they're all looking at, or whatever? Like,
side note, funny little anecdote. So I had gotten to a point where I thought that I didn't rely on social scripting.
Yeah.
I learned within the last few years that I'm on the spectrum and have ADHD, and so I went for the first time on a date with a couple. So it was my first throuple date.
Yeah.
And I was made aware that I don't have a social script for a throuple date. It's like, well, okay.
Oh, I love that. You're like, wait a minute, I don't know how to do this.
Right. And I just I went into such a
Oh, I like that so much. This makes me so happy, because that's something that I would do. I'd be like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be doing for this?
Yeah, it was really eye-opening.
So how did the date end up going?
It was fine.
Because you were just you.
We'd known each other before.
Oh, okay, you did.
So.
All right, okay. But you were like, wait a minute, I don't have any script for this in my head.
Right. I found myself, because, I've gotten really good at playing the social lubricant person.
Yeah.
Who just makes everybody comfortable and, fills the silence as needed. And I didn't do that here because I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Yes, I love that.
It was great. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I find myself doing that too. Like, oh, if nobody's saying anything, I should be speaking. Mm-hmm. I should fill the silence. Like, I should be saying something. And I remember one time, and it was a long time ago, but it was like a work acquaintance who was like, and I was like, oh, I love that. You're like, wait a minute, I don't have any script for this in my head. Right. And I remember one time, and it was a long time ago, but it was like a work acquaintance who was like, and I was like, I don't have any script for this in my head. Right. And I remember one time, and it was a long time ago, but it was like Oh, this is a perfectly appropriate moment to shut the fuck up. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I don't have a gauge for that. I didn't have a gauge for that. I still struggle with a gauge for that.
Yeah.
Like, when do I shut the fuck up? I don't know. I still don't know. Anyway, getting back to topic, which I'm also really good at getting off topic, which all my listeners know who've listened this far are well aware that I got the ADD and I bounce around from squirrel to rabbit hole real fast.
Yeah.
So how would you say that kink and exploration of non-monogamy helped in your healing journey?
That's a great question. So one of the things that has been most beneficial for me with wading into those communities is just the sheer amount of opportunities to challenge myself.
Okay.
I came into it not really knowing what I liked. I spent a lot of my 20s thinking that I might be asexual.
Yeah.
And, starting to realize that, no, that's not the case. I just respond differently to different power dynamics or, how to work with my brain, because I would find myself getting lost in my thoughts when I was wanting to connect with my partner.
Yeah.
And so the kink world was a great opportunity to discover that there are other ways to keep my brain occupied.
Yeah.
And so...
Good ways.
Yeah.
You don't have to get into further detail. You don't have to... Obviously, this is going to go on YouTube, so you don't have to get into further detail.
Of course.
I'm just... we all know when we say good ways, people can use their imagination.
Of course. So it's just been really a great space to take chances that I hadn't been comfortable taking previously, and to just meet a lot of different people and experience a lot of different styles and just activities. The sheer amount of kink that is out there.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Baffled.
There's a lot.
So
I'm
that's
still
been
learning.
really helpful.
Learning.
Oh, of course. I think it'll be a kind of a lifelong learning. Even if I were to leave the lifestyle, I think there would still be a lot to learn coming out of it on the other side.
I think so. Yeah. It's fascinating. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's fascinating. It's interesting. I've learned so much participating in it, and I don't know if it's for me for forever. But I've enjoyed the journey of participating in it and seeing what it's about, and it's definitely opened my mind to new possibilities and new perspectives of, I don't have to just sit at home and wait to find a shitty date to have sex at some point. Like, I can just go and find that in a safe way on my own as a consenting adult and have a good time without having the expectation of the strings or relationship or dates or the build up to that, or I have to get on dating this guy because I need to get laid. No, I can just find that at any time with partners that I have available or friends that I have available for that. And so I'm like, I don't have that pressure in dating anymore. And it's really shifted like how I date. And it's actually helped considerably with my anxious attachment in dating. Because reading Attached, I've read that probably too many times, but one of the biggest takeaways I got from Attached was, if you're anxiously attached, date multiple people. And I'm like, yes, that's a great way to quell anxious attachment. Date multiple people. You're not focused on one person. You're not getting too attached or invested to the one random person that you decided to date who might be showing you love, even though you may or may not be compatible with this person. And that way, if you're dating multiple people, you're not getting too invested into one, person that may or may not actually turn out to be compatible. And I'm like, and if I'm having my needs met as frequently as I want or as infrequently as I want, whether it's months or days or whatever apart, then I'm not really worried about that when I'm dating, and there's no pressure to make that like the priority in a relationship, because I'm like, I can get that whenever I want, wherever, for the most part. And it's like, okay, so I don't really have the same anxiety about I must find it from the next person that I'm dating, if that makes sense.
Is that something that you experienced a lot before?
I did, yeah. As an anxious attacher, I was looking for a relationship, or at least I said to myself, my thoughts were, I'm looking for a relationship. And I think part of that was I did want a deeper emotional connection with somebody, but I also just wanted sex. And I'm like, I'm a grown woman, and I'm like in my sexual prime for the most part. I mean, clinically, I guess, research studies show. So I'm like,
Clinically.
I'm like, so I'm here for it. And I'm like realizing that this is not a healthy way to date if that's like one of my goals.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is not a healthy way to date.
Well, I think one of the strengths of engaging with the lifestyle is that it takes away some of the performance.
It does, yeah.
If you're willing to be honest with yourself about what it is that you want, what works for you, what doesn't, you can really be honest about what you want.
Yeah.
You can say, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I have time for. This is what I'm emotionally available for.
Yeah.
And just put it out there. You don't have to try to play anybody.
Yes. And it seems like for the most part, granted there are exceptions to every rule,
Of
but
course.
it seems like for the most part that most of the members of the community that at least that I have met, they are fairly forthcoming in communication and open to, yes, I can meet those needs, or no, that doesn't work for me. And please be as communicative as possible and tell me what you want, what you need, what you're looking for, and what you're available for.
Right.
And either this is, going to work with us or not. Like, hey, I'm looking to date somebody. Ooh, I'm not looking to date somebody. Like, I'm just looking for tonight. I'm like, well, I'm looking for a regular thing, but no commitment. Oh, but I want intimacy with that. There's somebody or a variety of somebodies that will fit the bill for whatever you're looking for, as long as you properly communicate.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Getting slightly off topic, but totally related. When it comes to travel as part of healing, have you found that travel has been beneficial in your healing journey?
Absolutely. Although, to be honest, I haven't had as many opportunities to travel as I would have liked at this point in my life. My kids are still so young.
Yeah.
But I do really enjoy solo road trips.
I love it. That's travel.
Up to any, whether it's just a solo night over at Hurricane Ridge, or if I am driving down to Sedona and, touring through some of the national parks. It's something about the adventure of it, and doing it solo just leaves room for whatever kind of experience I want to have, and it leaves room for, gifts from the universe.
Yes, it does, right? Like so many adventures can happen especially when you're by yourself and don't have like some sort of strict agenda. Like, yes, you know where you want to go, but you don't necessarily have to, decide, oh, I'm going to stop here and see this, and stop here and see this, and then this time and this time and this time. Whereas the universe can show you like what is in the path for you, and it can, like you said, it can give you gifts along the way.
My favorite way to plan for a trip is to study everything get as much information as I can about the places that I want to go and where I'll be passing by, so that when I'm there I can choose, oh, I feel like doing this, and I'll know what's around.
That's a really good idea.
And it's so satisfying for my little planning brain.
I love that. Do you use like any particular software, like Google Maps or anything, or do you just look at it ahead of time and be like, yeah, I would like to see this, 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 and this, and this?
I pull up Google Maps. I start making some planning loose ideas of like which roads I want to take.
Yeah.
And then I just spend some time on Pinterest. I, look through, there's a website called The Discoverer.
Oh, I don't know it.
They do a lot of like listicles about travel.
Listicles, what's that?
Like an article that's made up of lists.
Oh, like, I've never even heard that term before.
Yes.
I like that. A listicle.
Yep. So like 5 things to do in Southern California, or
I've seen those. I didn't know they were called that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I really enjoy their site, and so I'll spend a lot of time there, looking for information and suggestions of different things to do nearby to my path, so that I can choose in the moment of whatever I feel like doing.
Yeah.
For example, for my 40th birthday, I took a road trip down to Arizona through the Grand Canyon, and when I first got there, my air conditioning stopped working on my car, and it was like late August, September.
Oh no.
I was miserable. And I like changed my plans and drove up into the mountains just so that it would be cooler. And I was so glad that I had the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
It's...
Oh yeah, it's horrid in August, and oh my god, it's
brutal.
It's not even good in August here in Seattle usually. I mean, right now it's been 70 and rainy, but usually in August it's in the like 80s or 90s, and I'm like, that's a bit hot for somebody who's from Seattle. Like, this is a bit much for me.
When I was driving through Zion National Park on that trip, it was so hot that I couldn't take pictures. My phone was too hot.
Oh my god,
being in the air.
The phone was like, nah, bitch, we can't do this. And you were like, really?
Right.
I bet I could just, that'd be me. I'd be looking at it going, really? You can't take a fucking picture? It's that hot?
It was so hot.
Oh, God. I can only imagine. Yeah. I don't ever want to be in that kind of heat. I mean, I've stepped out into Las Vegas when it's 115 degrees.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm walking in a sauna that exists in Mother Nature. I'm like, this is what this is. I'm like, this is awful. And I'm wearing clothes. What am I doing wearing clothes out here? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, well, because I'm socially required to do that, and I'd probably get stopped if not arrested otherwise. Anyway, how was it that kink and exploration helped trauma healing specifically?
Oh, in a few different ways. So, not to be too graphic.
No, you can be as graphic as you like. This is an explicit podcast.
Okay,
so.
That's good. That's good to know. All right, so one of the things that...
as graphic as you are comfortable with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, sweet. So my somewhat long-term partner that I started seeing when we opened up the marriage, we did a lot of exploration. And he was a boundary pusher. Like, just that was kind of the way that he presented to the world.
Okay.
And the way that that tied in with trauma healing for me is that... he would make me come so many times that it would like remove this barrier that I had, and I could let out. I would start sobbing.
So it was like an emotional release.
It was almost like somatic therapy.
Interesting.
Just not intentional. And it came about as like a side effect.
Okay.
Of just that emotional breakdown or that physical breakdown of just...
back to back to back to back to back.
Right.
Yes.
And so now, like, I've learned enough about it to seek it out intentionally. Yeah. I've made a few friends who like know that that's what I need, and they'll help me get there and take care of me afterwards. And I'm so grateful for that. It's discovering that sex can be somatic therapy. Yes. In certain situations. Yes. So that has made a noticeable difference for me. Yeah. Another part was tied in with body positivity and, body acceptance. Just seeing that there were a lot of people that were attracted to me. Yes. And being told, as I was growing up, like, I've never been a slender person.
Me neither.
And
never been a skinny person.
So
Never been accused of being skinny.
Just... growing up feeling like I was wrong and like no one was ever going to want me if I didn't look like this particular
model stereotype. Yeah, that's exactly typical. Yeah. Yep.
That was hugely helpful in starting to be able to even face the parts that made up all of that body shame. Yeah. And so as I've gotten to understand kind of what that looked like and where it came from, I've been able to use parts of the lifestyle. Like, one of my favorite parts is just getting dressed up. Yeah. Wearing the clothing that I wasn't allowed to wear when I was growing up. Yeah. And feeling the way that I wasn't allowed to feel. Yeah. To feel powerful and sexy and to show it off and not be ashamed of that.
Yeah, not told that you're bad for your body, or you shouldn't show off your body, or you're a woman, cover it up.
Right, or I'm going to make my brother in Christ stumble.
Oh, God.
And so it's been hugely helpful in kind of unpacking multiple layers of things. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, same. That's amazing. I'm so glad you were able to share. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that. No, well, it does sound like your pleasure. Yeah. On so many levels.
And what's so great is now I actually know what will bring me pleasure, and I know how to ask for it, and I know how to say no.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
and well, I'm still getting better at saying no. It's hard. Like I have a friend.
It still is.
Yeah, it's still hard to say no. I have a friend who's been like asking me like, and I said, hey, I'm not participating in this right now. Like I'm out of the lifestyle, and yes, I was in it before, and yes, I know we've been, intimate before, but I'm not interested in this at the moment. And they're like, okay, well, when are you coming back? Are you coming back? What's going on? I'm like, what about no? Do you not understand?
Yeah.
Because I didn't say it explicitly. And I'm struggling to say it explicitly. I'm like, because I'm not saying just flat out no, because I also think it's mean, and I don't, I'm like, okay, I need to have a conversation in person where I say, hey, I'm not doing this right now, and I need you to stop asking. Like, and I need you I need to be braver and do that. But
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet. So.
My proudest moment as far as learning to say no.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of playing with a partner.
Yeah.
And it was just all about him.
Oh.
And I was
No.
just not enjoying it. And
No.
I stopped him and told him I was done.
Good job.
And I was so proud of myself.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm proud of you too. That's incredible. How hard is that?
It was hard, but at that point I
bet you
had
felt-
practiced enough. That's one of the things that I really have gleaned from all of this is, I meeting all these different people and having all these different opportunities has given me chances to like do it awkwardly.
Yeah.
To do it badly until I could learn and see, oh, you're not going to die if you make someone unhappy.
You're not going to die.
Okay.
But it feels like, but it feels like in that moment, right? Because we revert to our, you name the age here, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old selves, where we were literally dependent on our caregivers for survival, where we would die or potentially die if we didn't please or do as our caregivers wanted us to do or be what they wanted us to be or whatever.
Right.
Because we literally depended on them for our survival.
Yeah.
And so our brains are frozen in this, and then we get this moment as an adult where we're like, I'm going to die. And it's not logical. And it's not like the thought of I'm going to die comes into our head necessarily. Maybe it does for some. It doesn't for me. But the thought of, oh God, they're not going to like me. And then it goes to the core wound of I'm going to be abandoned by my caregivers. I'm like, wait a minute, this person's not my parent. I am not going to die if I tell this guy no, that I'm not interested. I'm like, I'm not going to die if I say no thank you. Or I'm not going to die if I say, hey, I need a break now. Or whatever. And it was helpful. I had a pro who happened to be a friend of mine that I knew way before, who taught me some canned phrases. And I was like, oh, these are super helpful. Yeah. Like,
You should make a listicle of those.
I should make a listicle of those. I'll have to put that in
Top 10 ways to get out of a sexual encounter.
Top 10 ways to get out of a hey, baby, I just need a break right now. Like, hey, I got to take a break. Or I'm meeting my friend. Or I got to go check and see if my friend's here. Or whatever. Yep. She had a good list. And hey, baby, I need a break was my favorite. I was like, oh, I like that. Hey, baby, I need a break. It doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. It gets me out of it. And everybody's fine. And I'm not causing any sort of confrontation.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite. Circling back around. I'm sorry. Did I let you completely answer that before I circle back around?
I have no idea.
I'm sure. We'll say it's good.
Okay.
Where all have you traveled that you would highly recommend, or someplace that you really want to go if you haven't been somewhere you highly recommend?
Ooh. I think the top of my list for places that I'd like to go, I really want to go to the Faroe Islands.
Where is that?
Kind of northeast of Scotland. I think the Faroe Islands are part of Denmark, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
But I highly recommend you look up some pictures. I think that you would enjoy.
I will definitely be looking up pictures for that. Oh my God. I love Scandinavia. I love the UK. I love Europe. Most of my traveling has been done to Europe. I did count for those of y'all keeping track of I think it was episode 1. I was like, I've been in 24 countries. I counted. It was 24. It's 24. Counted. So I have been to 24 countries, but most of them have primarily been exploring Europe because that's where I've been enjoying it the most. It's where I've been the most fascinated. And there's plenty more of Europe that I still would like to explore. But that was the most fun I've had so far. And the UK and Scandinavia just holds a special place for me just because I have the most fun when I'm there. I have family in Sweden, And I just particularly enjoy, I also have family in the greater London area, but I just, I don't know, it feels like a piece of my heart is in the UK, and then another piece is in Sweden. So you have mentioned that you traveled solo. What appeals about solo travel to you? You said earlier a little bit about like the downtime of road trips. Can you expand upon that a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, as I've been learning about my autism and ADHD, I've just made a lot of discoveries about how I function best. And solo road trips fit me very well because I struggle with feeling obligated to others, especially if I'm not enjoying an experience.
Yeah, because then you're stuck with them.
Right.
Yeah, I know
and
that feeling.
Is really alleviated especially when I do car camping, or if I'm traveling somewhere that is not heavily populated, so it's unlikely that I'm going to run into like booked hotel rooms.
Yes, yeah.
So I really enjoy the freedom that it gives me to change my mind.
Yeah.
Or to respond to changes that are happening around me. For example, when I was driving back from Arizona, I came up through California, and I had some plans to stop at Crater Lake, but there were a lot of wildfires that summer. And so I switched it up and I went over to the Olympic Peninsula, and if I'd been with someone else, that might not have been possible, or if we had made all these plans of how our trip was going to go.
Or had reservations somewhere or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, so keeping my options open really works well for me, and the solo road trip is just...
I love that. I was scared of solo travel at first when I looked at it originally in my 20s. Late teens to early 20s, I started looking at travel, and I was like... Well, I think it was like in my mid-20s when I started actually traveling. So I was like, wait a minute, if I wait for somebody to go, I could be waiting my entire life.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to go if I want to experience these places. But I was scared. And there was no work that had been done. I was a dispatcher. I was really good at compartmentalizing. I was borderline sociopathic. I was very low in empathy, which is something they don't tell you about cops and dispatchers, about how they conduct the psych evals for cops and dispatchers, how you have to be super low in empathy to be good at this job. Anyway, they were like, oh yeah, you fit the psychology of a cop and or dispatcher perfectly. I'm like, yeah, and now I know why. Now I look back and I'm like, that's a bad thing. That's not a good thing. And I'm like, and there are cops with empathy, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of cops with empathy, and I think there are cops that are very good at compartmentalization, and a lot of cops that maybe don't take care of themselves as well as they probably should.
Yeah.
And maybe there's one in every couple thousand that is good at empathy and compartmentalizing and sees a good trauma therapist on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I just haven't met them yet. And I know a few. But anyway, where was I going with this? That was a squirrel topic.
Solo travel.
Thank
you
you.
were afraid of it.
I got way the fuck off. Wee. That's what I say when I get way off topic. Yeah, I was afraid of solo travel because I didn't want to be with myself necessarily. So when you started traveling solo, you were already good on that journey?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of my avoidance came because when I would experience distress as a kid or any kind of big emotions, I was taught to go by myself in my room.
Oh, okay.
So, all of my strategies for healing or taking care of myself involved being alone. So that's...
Got it. So that's what you were trained to do.
That was my baseline. And
gotcha.
So something like a solo road trip I was already primed to succeed there.
Gotcha. I must admit that when it came to traveling initially, I was scared. I was scared to go. Mostly because I think I was afraid of spending time with myself and not having anybody to fall back on and have a conversation with, or somebody to help me and guide me, and like, well, what do you mean I have to figure out the German transit system on my own, or whatever. I mean, I have been to Germany, but not actually. Germany is one of the few places I haven't been alone. Most of my travel has been done alone, but Germany is one of the few countries I've been to with other people. Anyway, all right. So we covered the travel. Getting back to the kink and healing trauma through exploration in the lifestyle community, how has it helped? Or has it helped with your relationships?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So kind of tying back in with what we were talking about with asking for what you want. And for a while I had gone through a breakup, and when I was going through the divorce, I didn't really have a lot of capacity for intimate connection.
Yeah.
But I still wanted to explore. And so, I guess in that sense, the kink world and the lifestyle in general left room for me to ask for what I needed at that time.
Okay.
And so it's been helpful in that way, but I do find it more challenging to connect beyond just the physical in this lifestyle.
Okay. Why is it more challenging?
I find a lot of people are coming into it from either from monogamy or from a committed relationship. And so
okay.
they are looking to, add to their roster. And so if I want to find someone that I can build enough trust with and, explore intimate connection with, it's been really difficult to find someone who is either in that kind of relationship and still has capacity for more, or who is not already in that kind of relationship.
Got it.
And also wants to experience that. Like there's not a lot of overlap.
Gotcha.
I'm finding.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's, I can totally see that. Thank you. What are some ways that might ease the transition for anybody that would want to explore the lifestyle or kink for themselves?
Find someone who is already in it.
Okay.
And let them know that you're interested.
Okay.
One of my early partners was a member at the lifestyle club that I like to go to. And, he took me and another partner of mine at the time. So I had a safe person with me.
Okay.
Who, gave me the social breakdown, and helped me answer any questions that I had, and just to take away some of the mystery of it.
Okay.
And make it more approachable.
Yeah.
And after that first time or two of going, I had met enough people and I knew what to expect. And that just opened the door for the rest of it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. Good advice. What advice do you have for anybody that's struggling with their sexual identity or their preferences or their fantasies or exploring kink in general?
That one of the first great therapists that I had a lot of shame around things like rape fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
And
which are super common.
Right. But being an empathetic person, I couldn't accept that about myself. Mm-hmm. Because, in reality, I would be horrified.
Of course.
It's despicable.
Right. Well, like most women who have these fantasies would be.
Right.
Yeah.
But this therapist, she reframed it for me as power imbalances and power dynamics.
Oh, yeah.
And that just...
Because that's what it is.
Right. Almost instantly took away just a huge, suitcase worth of shame.
Yeah.
Because the way that I thought about people who engaged in that kind of behavior and the way that I thought about myself as a person were so incongruent.
Yeah.
Incongruous. Anyway.
Incongruous? Yeah, I think that is grammatically correct. Yeah.
So having that taken away was, like I said, life-changing.
Yeah.
And it also gave me a way to refine and face the things that were making me feel ashamed.
Okay.
Because once I had that big block out of the way, I could actually look at it.
Yeah.
And see, oh, this is where it fits, this is where it doesn't.
Right. I love that takes the shame out of it. That about covers it, other than the quick quiz question round, which I keep changing the name of every time, but the rapid fire question round, whatever the fuck I call it, I change the name, whatever I say. Unless there's anything else that you want to cover before we get to the rapid fire questions.
No, I think we're good.
Wonderful. I love it. What piece of artwork, movie, show, or any sort of creative work really was incredibly influential for you, and why?
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, I love that.
Especially when I was getting really into the Church of Christ. But even now that I'm kind of deconstructing that, it's just every time I read it, I love the way it makes me feel. I love that I pick up different meanings to things. It's so well written.
Yes, it is.
Such a great story.
Who doesn't like C.S. Lewis? I mean,
Right.
really. I can't tell you how many times I read that as a kid, as a teenager, and then, I haven't read it as an adult. I should read it as an adult.
I love it.
All right, I will. What do you do to decompress?
Smoke weed.
Yeah. Whatever you do for you. I mean, that's what we're here to hear about.
Yeah. I smoke weed. I do a lot of crafting. Right now I'm working on spell jars and I call them black thumb terrariums because they're artificial plants, and I have a bad habit of killing plants. So
you and me both.
Yeah.
If our listeners are interested in your crafts, where can they find them to purchase?
I do have an Etsy shop, and the name of the shop is I'm Catching Feelings.
I love that.
Thank you. And I'm also on TikTok under Manic Poly Dream Girl, and that has my link set up there as well.
Perfect. Okay. The last self-improvement and or trauma book that you read and highly recommend.
Oof, there's so many good ones.
Or whatever one that you highly recommend in general.
Yeah. No Bad Parts, I think, is one that made a huge difference for me. It really, again, gave me a new way to think about the different aspects of myself. One of the things that I would really struggle with is just not accepting my own anger or, whatever it was that I was struggling with, just trying to cut it out and not acknowledge its existence. And the No Bad Parts really helped me to start doing that and take a different approach to kind of integrate everything and understand how those parts served me in the past and, whether they're still serving me now or not.
Or what they're trying to protect you from, or what they're trying to do, which is, if they're trying to serve you from something previously, or what they're trying to do to help you now, whatever they're doing is trying to help you, whether it's actually working or not. Yes, no, I love that book. I also wholeheartedly recommend that. Mm-hmm. What movie or book are you currently recommending to anybody who will listen?
Oh, I'm on a big Sarah J. Maas kick.
I don't know.
She has written a ton of really wonderful fantasy novels.
Sounds like fun.
I started off with A Court of Thorns and Roses and went through that series, and now I'm working through her Throne of Glass series. Highly recommend.
I love it. What is at the top of your travel or bucket or wish list? Well, actually, you addressed this earlier, and it was the say the name of the islands again.
The Faroe Islands.
The Faroe Islands, and they're off the coast of Denmark.
Denmark
and or Scotland.
Yes,
like in between the two.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Mm-hmm. What's the most useful travel purchase or item that you have or have made?
Ooh, my earbuds.
Yeah, those are
made a huge difference for me. Between flying and, just walking around in the city, I wouldn't keep them in a strange city that I wasn't used to. But I do like to have one in.
Thank you for clarifying that. Because I see people, you do see people walking around all the time with their AirPods or earbuds or whatever in. And you're like, do you know where you're at? Because this is pretty dangerous. Or, I don't know if that's their home city or not, right?
Even so, even if it is your home city, it is a risk to... especially as a female woman, to be walking around with earbuds in. It's just taking more risk than you necessarily need to.
Yes. But, I'm all for keeping one in. I just like to hear my surroundings. Like, oh, is that somebody approaching me from behind? Like, I don't care if it's the middle of the day because that shit happens, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And the foodie in me has to know what was for dinner tonight.
I had some prime rib and... considered getting some creme brulee, but didn't because I was pretty full.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Yep, prime rib can be pretty filling. That sounds amazing. What 4 songs would you say best describe who you are to somebody who does not know you?
Big Hamilton fan.
Okay.
That was one of the first albums or shows that I really did some deep diving on YouTube.
Really?
Oh my goodness. I was down the rabbit hole on Hamilton for a while. And now every time I hear someone who hasn't seen it or heard it,
Yeah.
I am like, oh, I'm going to introduce you.
Let me tell you all about this show.
Oh, man. It's, so, so good. And then the Decemberists, the Hazards of Love album,
Okay.
is super whimsical and really well written, and I just love Colin Malloy's talent.
I like it. Okay.
It's been around for years and years, and I've been a hardcore fan of that album for a long time.
Love it. Okay. Last but certainly not least, what advice would you give for somebody who's struggling with not being able to find a good therapist?
It's hard to say because there's so many different reasons that people could be struggling to find the right therapist.
Yes.
We do have resources now that weren't available even, 10, 20 years ago. Something like BetterHelp or one of the online ones can be a good bridge until you can find someone.
Okay.
If that's not an option for you, something like building your own group therapy setting, creating a space for other people, if you're in an underserved area and you can't find care, which absolutely happens.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Consider creating a community space where you come together and support each other.
I love that. That is such a unique suggestion that nobody has offered yet. I love that.
Oh, well.
That's wonderful. And I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for taking the time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I hope to have you on again in the future, and I'm sure our listeners might be interested in having you on another episode.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
Thank you. I sincerely hope that you all enjoyed having Laurel on as much as I enjoyed interviewing her for the podcast. It was such an eye-opening experience. I know I said it in the beginning of the episode, and I'll say it again. There are just so many mediums of healing. There are so many ways to heal trauma. And who would have thought, without listening to this, who would have thought that kink and sexual exploration and orgasm could be one of the ways we could heal our trauma ourselves? But it is. And it's just one of the many ways we can work on ourselves. Maybe it's something that doesn't resonate with you at all. But it's just to give you an idea that there are so many different mediums and ways of working on ourselves and healing our trauma. And I just want to thank Laurel for being here, and I hope to have her on again in the future. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. Please share it with your friends. It's the best compliment you can possibly give. As always, work your shit out, not on other people, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you for tuning in.